This is the city we call our own. These are the stories of the people we call our neighbors. This is the heartbeat of our hometown. Naperville, this is Real Talk. All right, welcome back to Naperville Real Talk. This is our monthly market update for the month of March 2023. I can't believe it's March already, and I want to welcome our monthly co-host, Mr. Todd Gosden of Compass Mortgage. Todd, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I can't believe it's March. It's like St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner. Are you kidding me?
Warm weather is right around the corner, most importantly.
Oh, man.
Yes. We are, knock on wood, every time you start talking about that, all of a sudden now a snowstorm comes like up the last day of March.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay, though. That's okay. Well, I've been protesting the last days of winter. I've been walking around without a coat for 2 weeks. So, all right.
I have too, yes.
Well, today I want to keep kind of, in line with the format that we had and last time. And I want to give a quick tip up front. I want to dive just a little bit quickly into the numbers for Naperville. And then I want to have a conversation with you about one of the biggest pitfalls I see for home buyers. And especially since we're getting into that time of year when lots of people are having conversations about wanting to buy properties. And I want to prepare them so that they're ready for some of these things that they're going to encounter. Does that sound good?
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right, perfect. So, one of the things I want to touch on is now that, the market's, at least in my world, the market's ramping up, right? People are getting out there buying and selling. Had an inspection yesterday on one of my listings. Had an inspection a few weeks back for one of my buyers. And so inspections are always a hot topic. And coming out of the last couple of years where, buyers had to sell their right arm and leg to get a house, right? And you really couldn't, you couldn't ask for repairs. And a lot of times buyers really, I don't think this is a great idea, but a lot of buyers are waiving inspections. I'm sure you saw that in some of your buyers. But we do have a competitive market, but in these situations where you can maybe ask for repairs, or at least whether you're trying to evaluate, am I going to move forward with the purchase or am I going to walk away? And that's what I want to give buyers a couple of real quick things to remember, okay? And that's SSM. And so remember those three letters, SSM. When you're having an inspection and you're going over the inspection report the next day with your attorney, with your agent, remember safety, structural, and mechanical. Those are the three things to remember because everything else really doesn't matter, right? So,
Totally.
We've been homeowners a long time. We've seen drips under the sink at our own houses, right? We've seen, little rips in the carpet here and there when, Fluffy has a bad day, or whatever it is. Those kind of things are easily fixed, right?
Yes.
And it's not a big deal. And usually the money involved isn't a big deal either. But safety, so in other words, is there something that's going to cause imminent danger to you or your family or your guests in your home? Yeah, you want to address that. Structural, is there major foundation issues? Is there major roof issues? Windows, walls, right? And then totally. M is mechanical. So in this one, I have to remind buyers, mechanical, the question is not how old is the furnace. The question is, does the furnace work? Is the furnace leaking carbon monoxide? So again, we want to make sure that these are the main things we focus on. So if you're out there buying homes right now and you're getting into contracts and having inspections, remember to go over those three major points with your attorney, with your real estate agent, and you're going to be able to stay right on track.
Love it. Absolutely. Nothing more important right now.
Absolutely. And it's good to remember those things too, because if we get hyped up, buyers get hyped up in the emotion of wanting to buy, but the reality is you do need to pay attention to those important things. All right. So Todd, I want to talk a little bit about the numbers real quick.
Okay.
It's actually kind of the same story as last month here in Naperville real estate. Our median market time, so meaning how long is it taking homes to sell, is really exactly where it was and honestly where it's been for the past year. So we have 8 days, median days on market, right? So that's the kind of that middle number. It's taking about a week for homes to sell in Naperville. Now, if you take the average, which is going to pull in the outliers, those homes that have sat on the market for a long time, the homes that sell in a day, that's sat right around 30 days for the last year. So even with those outlying homes, the market's moving pretty quick. Would you agree?
The market is moving very quick, very, very quick. Yes, it is for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to deny that. It really is. It's funny. I had a conversation with someone I met at an open house a couple of weeks ago. We caught up this week, and I asked him what their plans were. And it was so funny. What he said to me was, well, I know that things are slowing down, and, so that's going to be good. We can kind of take our time. And I had to kind of stop him, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to make him feel bad, but I said, I'm just curious. Tell me where you heard the market's slowing down. Oh, well, everybody knows it. It's all over the news, market slowing down. And so it's really interesting to me. And I wonder if you've encountered this same thing where there's this perception and a lot of it's local news, cable news, internet, whatever. There's this perception that, the market's crashing or boy, things are finally calming down. And I got to tell you, I was in a multiple offer situation this weekend with a buyer. I had multiple offers on all of my listings this year. Most homes are selling in a matter of a few days. I can't find any evidence that in Chicagoland that the market's slowing down.
Well, when you start looking at nationally from an affordability standpoint, the Midwestern region of the country is typically the most affordable of all the regions in the country, number one. And number two is that, when you're in Chicagoland, there's such a huge diversity of people and jobs and corporations that, we are not going to lose as much value in homes, if any, like you would see maybe in Florida or Arizona or in Idaho or the Northwest or wherever. I mean, the reality is this. We are in a very good place here. And I think from a real estate perspective is we say, is you can't have a continual decline of inventory and all these people wanting to buy. How in the world are you going to have a bust, or how in the world are you going to have values go down when it's a supply and demand? And the supply and demand's on the wrong side, right? Yep. We don't have all these sellers right now. We have very few sellers and a ton of buyers. So values are going to sustain themselves, right? And so I think that we're just in a good place here. And obviously the best for everybody was to find a little bit more balance between sellers and buyers right now would be really great someday if that happens.
Totally. And, and I don't want to scare anybody because,
nothing
we've been
scared
in this,
about.
No, and we've been in this business a while. I mean, if I look back, just to last year, it was even crazier last year. So if it has slowed down in the sense that, yeah, okay, we don't have 50 offers maybe anymore, but I've seen 10, 12, so there is more opportunity out there for buyers. And the good news for buyers too is we are starting to see, because remember how I mentioned the days on market, there's the median and there's the average, right?
Right.
And the average is bigger because of these outliers. Well, we're starting to see more of those outliers. And the reason is that people, sellers specifically, are coming off of the last couple of years. And if you're, this, Todd, but if a seller is wrong by just a few percentage points on how they price their home, if they price it just 2 or 3, 4 or 5% higher than probably it should be, it makes a huge difference in how long it takes to sell.
Huge.
So there is opportunity for buyers. And I have some buyers who are like that right now. So if you can have a frank conversation with yourself and say, listen, I have a unique opportunity here to find some of these homes that, for whatever reason have been priced a little bit wrong, maybe because of their condition, maybe just because the seller's hopes were a little bit too high coming out of the highs of the market. And there's a great opportunity, especially for buyers who are willing to do just a little bit of work. I'm not talking about a complete rehab, but I'm, if in a little updating here and there you can, if you're a buyer out there, you can purchase properties under list price. You just got to know what you're looking for. You've got to work with an agent who's giving you advice about what things are actually worth. And you have to have an open mind about what the property could be.
Yep. And a whole bucket load full of patience.
That's right. Yeah, that's a bit. Yeah, 100%. I've had that conversation with a few buyers in the past week, and I'm trying to remind them, it's okay. Like, especially, it depends on your situation. Some people are under the gun time-wise, but for people who have the ability to be flexible, be patient, try not to grow weary of the process. One of the things I know that you and I always try to do so much work on the front end with our buyers so that when they get into the process, they have a lot less of that home search fatigue.
Yep.
Because it's a real thing. I mean, if you're going back and forth constantly well, what about my pre-approval here? What about my pre-approval here? And you're doing that last minute trying to write offers. That's exhausting. And if I'm showing people properties and they're changing their mind because maybe it was my fault that I didn't have enough frank conversations with them ahead of time about what they wanted, which is why I really emphasize that ahead of time. Let's get all the exploring out of the way at our consultation so that when we're out on the battlefield, as it were, we're focused and you're not going to grow weary.
Well, and I think that brings up another interesting topic, if I could suggest, is that so many people don't understand that they go into because all they read is about being pre-approved. And I think the other thing that people need to realize is that truly, if you're going to be in competition to find the house that you really love, you can always go from pre-approval to actually underwriting the file with no address, no interest rate lock, no anything. Because think about this, if you're working with Chris and Chris walks into a house and says, hey, my client is clear to close other than title and doing appraisal, which is done after you get a contract anyway, doesn't that add some validity to the client of saying, oh my gosh, they've taken this to a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to win, go to that extra length to just get it done so you have the opportunity rather than being in a place where you're with 10 other offers with 9 other pre-approvals.
That's right. And it's great to have that. The more flexible you can be as a buyer, the more attractive you'll be to a seller. So
that's right.
Not every seller wants a super quick close, but some of them do. And if you can't offer it and somebody else can, that's one of the major attractions about a cash offer, right? Is cash offer doesn't need to go through a loan approval process, and they can close typically as quick as title can be pulled. There's no, so that happens within usually 2 or 3 weeks. And so what you're talking about is if you as a financed buyer can go through this process to be fully approved pending the property appraisal and title, then you're making yourself just as attractive as a cash offer.
Well, and think about it. The cash offer has to show proof of funds.
Right.
The client's already shown proof of funds. That's why they're clear to close.
That's true. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you're looking at it from the standpoint is that, you look at somebody who's gone that commitment to be ready to do it. It shows you they really want to buy.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree.
Interesting, right?
Very. And so I'm trying to encourage my buyers to go down that route because, again, that's just going to put more arrows in your quiver to be able to hit that target. So while we're on the topic of financing, one of the biggest questions I'm encountering, and this isn't just to this year, this happens all the time, but especially this year, especially with, there's so much noise coming at us all the time. My buyers are being bombarded with ads on Zillow and Redfin and all these websites. And, they accidentally put their financial info in somewhere and they've got 25 lenders calling them, and I have conversations with folks and I'll say, well, it's really important that you get connected with a great local lender who cares about your situation, who is invested in making sure that you get what you want. And obviously that's one of the reasons I love so much working with you and your team. But one of the objections that comes up sometimes is people will say, well, I talked to so-and-so but this rate that I was quoted by such and such bank, it was just a lot lower. So I think I'm going to go with them. And I just put out a video on Instagram the other day, and you can go check it out if you want to. But basically the idea is there's no magic sauce that one lender has, right? And you can speak to this better than I can. It's not like, oh, we have the special rates over here. Let me open up the closet back here. The special rates are back here. It's like, no, the rates are what the rates are. And you're going to qualify for various rates based on your specific situation. So why are they seeing, Todd? Why are people getting these quotes that maybe are half a point or more lower than what everybody else is offering them?
Well, I think I can speak to that first and foremost from you said internet or whatever. They're trying to capture your attention, right? It's no different than saying that the sports car that you see on TV is $335 a month until you get there and it's $1,500 a month. It's once they capture your attention, they want to talk to you, and that gives you that energy to go, oh, geez, I'm going to see what that's about because that sounds great compared to what I'm seeing. I think ultimately people have to understand about interest rates is that if you and I were to buy Apple stock today and we were to buy it at noon and we bought it relatively at the same time frame, we're going to have almost the exact same price for that stock if we purchased it versus someone purchasing in the morning versus afternoon. It could be completely different. The reality is interest rate is a bond, and the bonds trade in the bond market just as stocks trade in the stock market, right? And so the reality is that yes, interest rates can change 2, 3, 4 times a day depending on the volatility. But the reality is also that depending on what that individual bank or broker are charging you, okay, the number one thing you want to ask for is, what is your zero cost interest rate today? I want that interest rate where you're not adding additional, what they call in the financing world, points to lower the interest rate. And so when you ask for a zero cost interest rate, it's an easy way of figuring out, okay, how am I comparing, right? And there's also a topic of APR, which we won't go into today, but relatively speaking, if you drive up to O'Hare from where we live here in the western suburbs of Chicago and see 5 different billboards or 5 different interest rates, they're not really different interest rates, you're charging different costs.
Yeah.
So once you determine your interest rate, then you could pay whatever you want to have as low an interest rate as you wish to have. But there's a mathematical formula, right? Because you start paying for interest rates, you got to figure out how am I going to pay that off? Meaning that how many years does it take for me to earn back that money to be in that house at that interest rate? And I think that that's the empowering factor that you and I have and many others have to help people is, yes, that's an option, but let's talk about what that actually means for you. Rather than selling something, empower somebody with information so they can make the decision rather than you trying to make a decision for them. And I think that's a really important thing to state here.
I agree. And that's the difference between being a salesperson and being an advisor, right?
That's right. 100%.
I've, in any conversation I've ever had with you, observed that you've had with a client, it's not about trying to push somebody into something or trying to convince them into something. It's about educating and informing. Yep. And I tell my clients the same thing on the real estate side. I'm not here to make decisions for you. You're going to make the decision, and hopefully I've empowered you and informed you enough that you feel great about the decision you're making.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. You give people the right information and do it the right way, they can participate in the adventure they're going on versus you telling them which direction down the path to go.
And I think too, one of the things that I see is, because we can wander and, correct me if I'm wrong, but 20, 30 years ago, we just did not have this much information at our fingertips. I mean, 30 years ago, there was no internet to be able to go look at what interest rates were, even to go look at what homes are. And so you had to go to a trusted professional to get this information. However, the bad thing about this wealth of information at our fingertips, there's good things about it. But the bad thing is there's a lot of people, like you said, trying to grab your attention. And so I'll see things all the time where it'll say, well, here's the interest rate. Well, yeah, well, maybe what they're showing you really is the interest rate, but it's for someone with an 800 credit score who's putting 20% down, who has 0 debt on their books, whatever it may be. And maybe that's not your situation, right? So that plays into it too. And so if you have people,
totally.
And I have had those conversations with buyers where they've said, well, so-and-so at such and such bank said the interest rate, I talked to them, they said the interest rate was this. And did they run your credit? And did you show them bank statements? Well, no. We just had a conversation. Then they can't even possibly tell you what the interest rate would be.
Nope, sure can't. It's not even possible. I mean, that's just the way it is. And whatever. Yeah, it comes back to, there's so many ways we could go down the road in this conversation. I would just say is you nailed it right there. And the key is finding empowerment in this process, because this is the biggest investment likely most people will buy in their lives, and make it purposeful with information and make it purposeful with the people you choose to work with.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything left to say. Hey, Todd, thank you so much for joining me. I think it's going to be interesting to see where things, continue along, and we'll check back in April. For now, if you guys haven't subscribed, whatever podcast platform you're listening to, go make sure you can find. Now we've got the Naperville Real Talk podcast on its own feed, and we've got Naperville Monthly Real Estate Update on its own feed. But if you want to just watch me and Todd, we're all on YouTube. Everything's there together, and we'll see you guys next month.
See everybody.